Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, whatever part of the world you are in. Thank you to each and everyone for making the time to be with us today for this program. We're pleased to welcome you to the third African Press Club Discover Africa series with a focus on Namibia today. We hope that you enjoy it and that it will be worth your time. And without further ado, I will introduce our panel for this event. And permit me to start with our lead speaker, who is Hero Rieket. And my name, by the way, is Chiogo Ikoku, and I'm the editorial lead for the African Press Club. So Hero Rieket, who is Hero Rieket? Hero Rieket was born and raised in Windhoek, the capital city of Namibia. His parents are a bit of a mix of different tribes. Mother is Damara. Her grandfather was Dutch. This was during the colonial times. And Hero's father is Rwandese. And then I'll continue in Hero's own words. I've always been an adventurer by heart, curious about all things around me. My family was not too traditional, but we did have some customs that we followed. I got to learn so much about the different tribes in my country through my experience in school, and my grandmother was a great storyteller. She provided me with the foundation of who we are and where we come from. That was my introduction to my culture and people. Fast forward many years later, I find myself living in Barcelona, where I completed my master's in e-supply chain management. I'm working as a junior supply chain analyst for a company that provides ecological solutions in different sectors. I have also worked as a flight attendant for a national airline, Air Namibia, for about 5 years, which gave me the opportunity to travel to different parts of the country, Africa, and beyond. The most interesting thing about living abroad is that it gave me a deeper appreciation for where I'm from and how much there is to embrace about my culture. I carry with me the Namibian spirit. Our people are known for their kindness and welcoming nature. So that's Hero. And then our co-speaker, Norwin Ustwizen. In his own words, I am the second last born in a typical African family home, but do not conform to any of the traditional firstborn, middle child, or last-born syndrome. As I have developed my own syndromes, I have also believed that there is more to life and that I will always find at least one person to buy into my dream, wanderlust. My background training is in marketing and logistics. Although I am not convinced that my education and/or work has played any significant role in my burning desire and love for my country, travel and tourism, both locally and internationally. However, I need to admit that it enabled me to do so. In short, I am more comfortable living out of a suitcase with my passport stamped than in the comfort of a couch in front of cable TV. Very interesting knowing. And then lastly, our moderator, Webster Makombe. Webster Makombe is a 21-year-old Zimbabwean. He's a law student at the University of Zimbabwe and a firm believer in Pan-Africanism. Webster is primarily a zero hunger and nutritionist activist. He holds this role dearly as he travels around the world speaking to world leaders and captains of industries about the importance of investing in a hunger-free world. Wow, we have very interesting personalities today at our event, and we at the African Press Club are honored to have these people attend our event today and share with us experiences from their countries. Thank you so much, Norwin, Webster, and Hero for attending today's event.
Thank you very much.
So I will hand it over to Hero to start his presentation.
Okay, perfect. Let me quickly try and share my screen. so we can get into it. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll basically be talking about Namibia today. Namibia is the driest country in sub-Saharan Africa. Namibia has been inhabited since the early times by the San, Damara, and Nama people. Around the 14th century, immigrating Bantu people arrived as part of the Bantu expansion. And since then, the Bantu groups, the largest being the Ovambo, have dominated the population of the country, and they have constituted the majority ever since. I'm sorry. Just a second, I'm trying. I don't know why it's not allowing me to. Oh, perfect. Where did the name Namibia come from and what was it called before? Namibia was formerly known as Southwest Africa. The name of the country is derived from the Namib Desert, the oldest desert in the world. The name Namib itself is of Nama origin, which means a vast place. Burumba Karina is credited as the man who gave Namibia its name. To be honest, when I was compiling this presentation, I wasn't actually aware of Mr. Karina, but through research, I just recently realized that he passed on, and he is credited as the man that gave Namibia its name. Karina was a Namibian politician, academic, and author, a co-founder of SWAPO, which is the Southwest African People's Organization, NUDO and FCN, and the founder of a host of smaller political parties. What I found so fascinating about the story was that in his early life, Karina was able to study in Indonesia under the fellowship of the president, Dr. Sukarno, and he was invited to tea at the president's palace. They had a conversation and they spoke about their countries, and the president asked him, "What is the name of your country?" And he responded, "Southwest Africa." In turn, he responded, "That is not a name, that is a geographical area, my son. Slaves and dogs are named by their masters, but free men name themselves." I think those words really resonated with him, and that encouraged that inspired him to search to rename Southwest Africa. And finally, they concluded on the name Namibia, which is derived from the desert. In general, Namibia is quite a peaceful country. It's not known for a lot of instability. You won't really see much about Namibia on the news. It is relatively safe to travel and is not involved in any wars. It is a semi-presidential representative democratic republic whereby the president of Namibia is both the head of state as well as the head of government. Additional to the government political structure, Namibia has a network of traditional leadership with currently 51 recognized traditional authorities and leaders. These Namibian authorities cover the entire Namibian territory. Traditional leaders are entrusted with allocation of communal land and the formulation of the traditional group's customary laws. They also take over minor judicial work. In some traditional communities, some of these type of judicial work include marriages because in traditional communities, people are still allowed to practice polygamy. So part of the judicial work is ensuring that the people have the necessary documentation to document their partners respectively. The Southwest Africa People's Organization, SWAPO, which has had the majority of wins since the country's independence, has recently suffered some defeats as Namibians are losing trust in the ability of the party to run the country. People are starting to make different political choices. For the first time, SWAPO suffered the defeats at the local and regional government elections, which was held last year. This increases the influence of other parties dramatically and will have an impact on Namibia's future governance. One of the interesting facts was Job Amupanda, which is a young social movement activist, is the new mayor of our capital city, which just shows that there's been a very dramatic shift in the political situation right now in the country. Just to add a little bit about the political situation, one of the reasons why SWAPO, which is the leading party, is losing in the elections is because of one of the main reasons is corruption within the country. There are some scandals right now circulating regarding corruption, and the opinion of people have been changing, and people are really quite eager to see a change, and they're at a point right now where people are embracing different political parties and independent candidates for the next coming elections. So we hopefully, that there'll be a change in the next elections, and we'll be able to see some feasible benefits and changes in the country. The Namibian economy is heavily dependent on extraction and processing of minerals, such as diamonds, copper, uranium, zinc, and zinc for export. Namibia exports mostly diamonds, which account for 25% of the total exports, uranium, zinc, tin, silver, tungsten, food and live animals, and manufactured products. The main export partners are South Africa, the United Kingdom, USA, Angola, Netherlands, and Spain, among others. Mining accounts for about 8% of the GDP, but provides more than 50% of the foreign exchange earnings. Namibia is the world's fourth largest producer of uranium. I think we have the second biggest uranium mine in the world, which is in the northwestern part of the country. It is also a small producer of gold. The mining sector employs only about 3% of the population, that is the average. Namibia normally imports about 50% of its cereal requirements in the drought years. We are quite a dry country, so we have to import some of the goods. And the Namibian economy is closely linked to South Africa, which means that the Namibian dollar and the South African rand is 1-to-1, is pegged 1-to-1. So if you have to think about the exchange rate, you can compare the dollar to the rand in terms of how much Namibian dollars you would expect for a foreign currency. Outside of mining, tourism is one of the biggest contributors to the Namibian GDP. In 2016, a report by the World Travel Tourism Council estimated that tourism contributed approximately 14.9% of the GDP in Namibia, which is quite a high amount. The other key sectors include agriculture, fishing, manufacturing, and infrastructure, among other things. I thought I would give a bit of introduction into the different types of people that live in Namibia. So most Namibian people are of Bantu-speaking origin. The largest ethnic group is the Ovambo, which accounts for almost 50% of the population. They live mostly in the north of the country and in towns throughout Namibia. Other ethnic groups include the Kavango, which live in the northeastern part of the country, the Damara in the south, as well as the eastern part, Herero, Himba, whites. We have white people living in Namibia as well, Nama, Caprivian, San, as well as Bastard. The Khoisan, including the San and Nama, are descended from the original inhabitants of Southern Africa. Namibia also has many descendants of Angolan refugees. There are two groups of mixed race people in Namibia. These are known as the Coloureds and the Basters. They normally live within the central part of the country. Namibia also has a large Chinese minority. Of course, we know Chinese are almost everywhere in Africa. So the white population, which mostly consists of Portuguese, British, German, and Afrikaner people. Afrikaner are mostly the white people from South Africa, account for about 6.4% of the population and make up the second largest group of European ancestry in sub-Saharan Africa. Most Namibian whites and most of the people of mixed race speak Afrikaans. A small amount of whites in the country are descendants of German colonial settlers. In terms of languages, Namibia has about 27 languages. I don't exactly know all of them because some are just dialects, but I'll be willing to share some extra information after the presentation regarding the languages. The most common are Oshivambo, Kwekwekwevap, Afrikaans, Oshiherero, Rukwangali, Silozi, English, which is our official language, Setswana, and other African languages. We have the famous Welwitschia mirabilis, rooted in the desert sand, and is a unique desert plant, a fighter for survival, and therefore a symbol of Namibia's fortitude and tenacity. This plant can also be found on the Namibian coat of arms. So according to some studies of the plant, it is estimated to be between 1,000 and 1,500 years old. The Welwitschia mirabilis is endemic to the Namib Desert within Namibia and Angola. The plant is commonly known simply as the Welwitschia in English, but the name tree tumbo is also used. It is called Karos and Kurup in Nama. Twee blaar kan nie dood in Afrikaans, Nyanka in Damara and Onyanga in Herero. An adult Welwitschia consists of 2 leaves, a stem base, and roots. That is all. It has 2 permanent leaves, and they are unique in the plant kingdom. They are the original leaves from when the plant was a seedling, sorry, and they just continue to grow and never shed. So the plant that you see there, it consists of basically 2 leaves, and they basically shed and they form, they give the plant the form that it has. But it's such an amazing thing to experience and see when you're in the desert, and it's quite rare. So if you find it, it's really a beautiful sight. I'd also like to talk a little bit about, the imbuvi plaits of the women, also known as box braids. We all know that braids are a part of the African identity. Hello? Did someone say something? Okay. We all know that braids are a part of the African identity, and throughout history, their origin can be traced back as far as 3,500 BC in African culture. In Namibia specifically, the Himba and Balantu people are known world over as catalysts for box braids. The Balantu live in the extreme northern parts of the Omusati region, which is in the north, and part of their tribal area extends in southern Angola. Traditionally, rather insignificantly among the Oshivambo-speaking groups, they were not frequented by early traders during the 19th century, or did they participate in signed agreements between the German government and various Ovambo chiefs, which basically allowed them to retain some of their traditions and keep them for a longer period than most other tribes in Namibia. I've shared a picture of how the braids used to look like, and it's quite fascinating during that period in time. Namibia has a large number of rock art sites scattered across the country, especially rock engraving sites. The best known rock art areas are the Brandberg Massif in Damara land and Tweefelfontein, a UNESCO World Heritage Rock Art Site, also in Damaraland. Both these sites are in the Irongo region, which is in the western part of the country. Another important painting area is the Irongo Mountains, southeast of the Brandberg, one of the richest rock painting areas in the subcontinent. The Brandberg has large numbers of sites scattered across about 750 square kilometers, which are mostly the work of ancestral bushmen, sun hunter-gatherers, and maybe about 2,000 years old or more in some cases. They are really, really beautiful artworks that you can also find online, and it's really, really beautiful. Meanwhile, in Tweefelfontein, which is one of the sites, you can find some of the most important rock engraving sites in Southern Africa. Namibia also has a ghost town, which is known as Kolmanskop. It is situated 15 kilometers east of the harbor town in Ludwitz. Ludwitz is in the south western part of the country. Kolmanskop was used to be a small railway station, in 1908, when the railway between Ludwitz and Keetmanshoop, which is a different town, was built. As far as the legend has it, the station derived its name from a Nama man called Coleman, who got stuck at the site with his ox wagon and subsequently died of thirst. In 1908, the railway worker, Zacharias Lewala, found a shiny stone and took it to the chief railway foreman, August Stoch. Stoch had been stationed at Grasplatz with the instruction to keep the railway line clear of sand. He also had a hobby as a mineralogist and had advised his workers to bring any unique stone they might find to him. He immediately assumed that the stone that Lewala found was a diamond, and he later confirmed this with one of his partners. And after that find, soon hordes of prospectors descended to the area. By 1912, a town had sprung up, producing 1 million carats a year, or 11.7% of the world's total diamond production. This became the richest town in the world at that time. They successfully continued their search for diamonds. Intensive mining depleted the area by 1930s, and in 1928, the town's fate was sealed when the richest diamond fields ever known were found on the beach terraces to the south of Namibia. The townspeople left in droves, abandoning their homes and possessions, and it was never occupied again. So this town, as you can see in the pictures, is deserted. It's a bit of a ghost town. It now reminds us of our society's power to build, but also of the material waste and human suffering we're capable of wreaking. And hopefully it can serve as a reminder that this should never happen again, the colonial evil. Onto something quite interesting as well is Khoisan languages. So I'll provide a quick guide to some of Namibia's click languages. Namibia's Damara and Nama people speak Khoikhoi, while the San, also known as the Bushmen, speak various related languages, depending on the tribe. Khoikhoi has 4 click sounds written in the following characters, but even speakers of this language are baffled by the San, who use at least 7 clicks. Even worse, getting your clicks mixed up spells trouble, as the word with a different click has a complete different meaning, so you always have to be careful. I will let Norwin perhaps just provide us with some, provide us with the proper pronunciation of the clicks so that we can all understand, because he speaks Khoikhoi.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. As it was given through now, I would start with the first one here. Okay, the four, I am from the Nama Damara tribe, which speaks the Kwekwekovab, and we use four of the click sounds that was just given. And let's quickly see the examples that has been used here. The first one, which almost looks like a hash, you pronounce as, it's almost as if you are clicking or the same sound as you would click your fingers, but do it with your tongue. So that's the second that we have here that looks like an exclamation mark that we pronounce as. In fact, guys, all of these are tongue, as it was explained earlier, it's all clicks are being done with your tongue. So it's quite interesting how you can twist your tongue if you are not careful. So again, the hash one is, whereas the exclamation mark goes. And then we have the, almost hit the backward slash, forward slash, but those two of them together is almost as if you are, what is it? Sound that you normally do when you are angry in our African culture, you almost do that. So that is what you would use to do that for. And then I almost skip. When it's only one of the lines, then it's, I'm not sure whether we are following. So one more time, I'll just quickly run through this and maybe take an example of a sentence that I will construct with these signs, with the clicks. So the first one that that we covered was the hash one, which is, then we have the exclamation mark kind of, which is, the two lines are, and then if it's only one of them, then it's. So there's normally an easy sentence which I normally use whenever I introduce my language to somebody else that doesn't speak it. It's like, let's go dancing. So it's a complete sentence, but each word, so 4-word complete sentence of which each word has a meaning. Let's go dancing, literally translated, which will be him, ngap, ha. So let's go dancing. That is a complete sentence with at least 4 words, and each of them has got a different click sound in front of it. Thank you, Iro.
Amazing. Let us continue. So regarding the Namibian music, popular styles of music include hip hop, R&B, soul, reggae, Afro pop, house, and kwaito. Upon Namibia's independence, Jackson Kauyewa and Rashi Hama had been the most outstanding Namibian performers. These were the artists that sang our liberation songs. There were so many anthems from them that our people would sing during those times, and even after independence, people would be singing these type of songs. And more recently, the kwaito genre is the most popular and successful music genre in Namibia. It's believed to be the biggest industry in Namibian music, and it's basically one of the only that is heavily supported by the youth. It is so because of the social economical issues, as many artists enter the music industry with the hopes of strengthening self-employment and making a living out of it. The Namibian music industry remains really underdeveloped, with only a few record labels, no major music awards. Recently, our Namibian Annual Music Awards was cancelled after running for about 10 years. So there's literally no platform available to celebrate the achievements of the artist. The business side of the music in Namibia is not as lucrative as one would expect. Streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify were only made available recently in the country. These platforms are slowly replacing the physical copies, while most consumers in Namibia aren't making the crossover to digital platforms due to various reasons. Since the new tools are quite new and you have to pay for the services, I think people are still a bit hesitant as to how it works. But I'm sure with time and some experience, it will hopefully it will take off. Basically, this takes a hard knock on the revenue, which makes it almost impossible for people to break even that are releasing music. While the crossover to streaming platforms is in full effect, most artists aren't educated about how to go about this new way of distributing music, which is also one of the reasons why sales aren't quite favorable. However, even though there are so many struggles, artists are still continuously creating and releasing good quality music in Namibia. I wanted to share some of the traditional attires within the country. I couldn't share everything, but in the first picture, you'll see the Obambo people, really bright and beautiful colors. The second has the Nama people, really exciting as well, different patterns. The bottom left, you find the Herero people. The top piece on top of the head is known as the Oshikeva. And the final picture is the Obahimba people. The Obahimba people are one of the few native groups within the country that still really stick to their traditions and the early ways of living. They are semi-nomadic, and they don't really normally leave their homesteads or their villages. They remain there in their rural areas, and they don't really mix a lot with other tribes. The best part, the food. Oh my goodness. So we have Matangara, which is the beef or goat tribe, which is so, so good. This normally can be ate with pap. Pap, I would say, I'm not sure what it's called in different African languages, but it's the maize meal down here. I think the only thing I can compare it to here would be polenta, but it's normally you normally eat it with that. Here we have marathon chicken. So traditionally, marathon chicken is chicken from the north of Namibia. It's free roaming chicken. And the tradition there is when you visit the north of Namibia, when you go to a home in a village, you would have to select the chicken you want to eat before it is slaughtered. And basically, one of the kids in the home have to chase the chicken before it is prepared and slaughtered, and then you'll be able to have the chicken. So they call it marathon chicken because they have to chase the chicken, and they're quite fast. And it's part of the tradition. So it's really, really good. I would advise everybody to try it. Here in the corner, we have vetkoek, which is, it's like bread, but it's deep fried. I think in some African countries, they eat something similar as well. And then we have mopani worms, which is also really delicious and a delicacy. Here we have marathon chicken as well. Then we have ombidi, which is like a dried spinach, which is also prepared in the north of Namibia. And we have pap, which is the maize meal. And then finally, one of my favorite snacks is biltong, which is dried meat. They also have droeworst, which is like dried sausage, basically. It's really, really good. I think in America, they have beef jerky, which is quite similar, but this is the best thing ever. Continuing on food. So kapana, which is meat prepared in this particular type of way, just barbecued, is really, really popular when you visit Namibia. So we have some of the best meat in the world, and our people love meat. So this is a typical dish on a weekend for us. So good. So it's just meat with some spices. We call this salsa. It's just some tomatoes, onions, some oil, and some of the spice. And normally they give it to you in a newspaper. But this is the tradition. You have the food, and it's so good. We also have some chicken feet here with some salsa and some spice as well. There are many other traditional dishes. I couldn't include everything, but those are just among the popular ones. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Hero, for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hero. It was amazing.
So we will give it to Norwin to add anything that you have to share with us. Norwin is the co-speaker today. Norwin,
Once again, hi guys. I actually got carried away in during the presentation, as I must say, because you can never stop learning. And I must admit, especially the origin of the name Namibia, quite an interesting story. And coincidentally, guys, I wish this presentation was just done. This is to you, foundation that I'm actually talking now. I wish this presentation was done at least a month ago. Then I hopefully would have had an opportunity to meet the person that actually gave the name Namibia to us, because sadly he just passed on, I think about 2 to 3 weeks now ago. So there was a very interesting fact, and quite interesting how, that's why they say you need to move so that you can actually appreciate where you're coming from, and also just know more about your own surroundings. And I would not really, unless maybe on later, if we have a bit of questions, I can come back, but I would just like to comment. I was busy typing something for Benjamin, who in the chat box actually mentioned something that the Nama people seem to be closer to or saw civilization earlier with their costume, not too traditional. So I would probably just like to add a comment onto that, that yes, because of our history, we, especially the Nama and the Oshiherero people, the influence is more German, for which were our former colonizers. So even on that Oshiherero dress, that the picture which we was shown, you would see that it's almost Victorian style, the dress itself. It's only the oshikeba, which is the head part. That long part actually represents kind of the cattle which they were farming with by then. But it is, again, the influence is from Germany, or from the Germans, which were one of our longest colonizers. So that's an interesting observation from Benjamin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Norwin. Webster, where are you? We're going to hand it over to you to manage the question and answer time.
Okay, sure. That would be awesome. And a question just came in the chat now, saying, what is the relationship between Namibia and, bordering countries in the north? Well, before I give to you, I'm from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is the neighboring country of Namibia. Zimbabwe straight, although you can agree that it's a very tough route to use, but like to just
yes, it is.
Make myself a neighbor of Namibia. So maybe knowing if you could answer the question about what the relationship is like for Namibia and its neighboring countries. Well, for starters, I can say the relationship is good because I also have my friends from Zimbabwe who are learning the English of Namibia. So that's a good thing. You can now go on, Norway.
Sure, Webster, as you rightly put it there. I don't know, Namibians by nature are honestly peace-loving citizens. And as such, our relationship with the neighboring countries is extremely well. We've got good bilateral relationships or multilateral relationships going on with all of our bordering countries. But moreover, we are more in terms of trade and exchange of trade, we are more linked with the South Africans, which is our southern bordering country. But then obviously the others also, we have got good business relationship and relationship going on with them, if that answers the question.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think in general, good relations. All of the Southern African countries are part of the SADC in terms of trade and stuff. So it encourages more free trade among the Southern African countries. We are part of the Southern African Customs Union, as well as, exactly. So there are a lot of initiatives and yeah, a lot of initiatives to connect us within Southern Africa. And I would say in general, relations are good. Yeah, I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, and also just a fun fact to add on to that, giving from my perspective as a Zimbabwean, one of the major roads in Zimbabwe, the road which passes through the High Court of Harare and the offices of the President and Cabinet, is actually named after one of the founding fathers of Namibia, Semnu, I don't know the name, Semnu Nyoma.
Semnu Nyoma, yeah, that is correct, Semnu Nyoma.
The road is actually called Semnu Nyoma Road. So I think also that's an indicator of how good the relations are, within SADC, Namibia, and its other neighbors. And then looking at the other question, Anthony is asking, it says, I hear the introduction of Swahili language. How far has it gone in Namibia, the introduction of Swahili as a language in Namibia?
Oh, no one, maybe you can go first, or do you want me to go?
You can probably, I will add on to what you have to say.
Because what I understand is within the I think, is it the SACUPI or the SADC?
SADC.
SADC, I think the official language now is Swahili. So in our country, for instance, we don't really speak Swahili, but this is like sort of like the instruction from the union to encourage all of us to be able to speak one language. So that's why they're introducing Swahili as a language. I'm not really sure as to how far it is in terms of implementation, whether it's courses that they're going to be offering within the schools or universities, but I'll definitely have to look into that and get back to you. But I know that this was an agreement that was only, this was something that was only changed recently, I think about a year or two ago, to encourage all of us to speak Swahili and to have that as the language that we all have in common. I think that is such a amazing initiative, because if all of us in Africa can speak one language, which is not necessarily a language that we got from colonizers, or it's something that we have among ourselves, we share, it's going to be an important thing for us to be able to connect and share our culture in that type of way. But yeah, I'll need to look into it definitely to find out if it has started, they've started to implement it, to see how far it has gone.
Probably on the ground, as Hiro just mentioned, honestly, guys, as an African and Southern African person, I would think and agree with the idea in principle, because I mean, it is one of those such Bantu languages that is widely spoken. But from the Namibian perspective, already with us, even the official language is not one of our native languages. That's a fact for one. And then secondly, Swahili is not even spoken in any of our 27 languages and dialects that was shown out by Hiro. So already I can assure you, maybe just because it was adapted on such international forums as trying to unify us as Africans and Southern Africans for that matter, in principle, it is something that we can only say it is good. But I can already assure you that and I already foresee, minus COVID that we are going through, that obviously we as Namibians will definitely have a long way before we could maybe successfully introduce such language as a medium of instruction or as a medium of communication for us. That's just my personal opinion. We all stand to differ, but I know it's just a situation on the ground.
Okay, sure. So now if you could allow me to move to the next question. We says, what would you say is the difference between how Namibia has managed to remain a peaceful country compared to other African countries enriched with valuable minerals such as diamonds, silver, and tungsten, some of the minerals that you're mentioning. Now, what do you think is the main cause, of why Namibia is managed to remain peaceful? I can give you, for instance, like I'm from Zimbabwe, we have a lot of chrome, and from the areas where you find such minerals, there's usually higher rates of instability, or where in Zimbabwe as well, we also have diamonds. I think we come fourth or third after Namibia and Botswana. But then, all these things happen. Why do you think Namibia is managed to remain peaceful, even, after having these large resources of minerals and natural resources that are envied all over the world? Maybe Hero can start and
No, I think no one is quite eager. Look at him smiling. Maybe you can jump in.
Not okay, not eager per se, but it's quite interesting the depth of questions that is coming out. Yeah, it's a challenge, but I will approach that. First thing that I maybe would touch on that is, yes, Namibia is one of, I think, the least countries that I know of that upon independence within its constitution actually took all that into consideration, especially when it comes to the conservation of natural resources and to make sure that it is actually conserved and used in such a way that it benefits every single person within the country and for the future generations to be conserved. So I think the laws that was passed and by independence, some of them inherited, but I think most of them were actually by independence drafted within the constitution. So the whole conservation and not only conservation thereof, but how the resources are managed is actually engulfed within the constitution. So that is what assisted us. And then obviously I know every other second country would have a ministry that is dedicated and responsible for such, but we have also almost a ministry for each of them. Say fisheries, which will be more for fisheries and marine resources and only with that. Then you have a ministry again for the environment that is solely again for the environment and tourism. So all these small concerted efforts from the government side actually made sure that the resources were managed in such a way that it was to the greater benefit of everybody else and not only to a certain part or mismanagement, which normally causes people at the end of the day to be unhappy, and that causes disruption and chaos within a democratic setup. But that I think our greatest part was the inclusion of such people thought of that, and it is included within our constitution, which is a primary law under which, supreme law under which all of us are guided and we function.
I also would like to add that in general, I think after independence, Namibians, after all the colonization and the wars and everything, our people became so, not timid, I'm trying to find the word. They were just so grateful that the war is over. If you speak to people that are 90 years old or 80 years old about why they don't want radical change or why they don't want to fight for specific things, or, they are just so grateful that the worst is over for them. So whatever corruption happens right now, the people don't have the desire to want to fight or to change it. As long as they are okay, they've got their freedom, they believe that is enough for them. And I think in general as a society, we've accepted a lot of things. Not to say that corruption doesn't exist in Namibia. Of course, there is corruption, We've accepted a lot of things and we've just been grateful for what we have. But now with recent times, with the current political situation changing, with more young people voting and more young people demanding things from the government, I would say that things are going to change. And I hope it doesn't disrupt the whole political system or escalates in the way that I know that a lot of African countries have issues regarding their democracy and stuff like that. But I hope that it doesn't escalate to that. But in general, our people don't really fight, protest, those different types of things are not commonly known. So it's not a good or bad thing, but for sure right now the situation is changing. So we'll see how it how it goes. But conservation was one of the biggest things that really helped the country kind of like control that part of over-exploiting everything. Yeah.
Okay, I have many questions. I'll just throw out a couple. I'll throw out a couple and give other people a chance. You might need a pen here.
Okay.
So my first is, Hero, you talked about traditional leadership and that you still have customary laws. A lot of African countries have this, they try to keep the customs so that they don't lose everything completely. Do you get a sense that you're losing your culture in Namibia? Is modernization taking over, or have you been able to find a balance, a hybrid situation where you can merge the old and the new? And then secondly, you talked about this young mayor as the mayor of a city. Is it the capital city?
Yes, went to the capital.
Yeah, how old is this young people? And also, do you see that a lot of young people are actually getting involved in politics, not just criticizing and writing and floating blogs, that they're actually going out there running for offices and taking over from the people who are much older? Then thirdly, any of these questions can be for both of you. Thirdly, the click language, very, very interesting when Norwin tried to explain that to us. I mean, I can't even do it, but is it connected or related to the click languages in South Africa? And then how do you learn these languages? Is it taught in school, or are you left, to the devices of just your parents? If your parents and your family don't teach you, then you don't learn about these languages and they die. And then finally, infrastructure. You talk about SADC, that's Southern African Union. We also have the Eastern African Union. We have the West African Union. I'm from West Africa, Nigeria. And I wanted to ask about infrastructure. Is it easy to move around within Southern Africa? Like for instance, from Nigeria, you can go by road to Niger Republic, to Ghana, to Benin, some other places, not the whole region because the roads are not that wonderful, but within your region, do you have to fly, or is it easy to just kick off your car and go around? I'm asking this because one of the reasons why we're doing these things is so that we can connect among ourselves as Africans and learn and actually travel and get to collaborate on things. Thank you. So many questions, but four.
I can start off. Or no one, do you want to go?
It's fine. I'm listening.
Okay. Regarding the culture, the old and new, as you were mentioning, I have to say that with all of the change and globalization and the effect that colonization has had on the country, it's been very difficult for us to maintain our culture. A lot of us have to. I mean, for me, for instance, I grew up in the city. My family wasn't traditional at all. My grandmother was in some sort of way, but we've lost our culture in some way because we've just grown up in the city. I know the city life, but not to say that there aren't communities that still keep it. Like the Himba people and the San people, they do not mix with people, and they also chose to remain in their villages to avoid having to be influenced by what was going on around them. So there are still communities that have kept all their customs and their ways of life without having the influence. But a lot of young people, I know for opportunities and things like that, they move to the capital or to the cities, and in that way, some people actually do lose their culture and their way of life, and they adopt and they stay, and obviously they have children and it's generations coming. But there are people that try, but I think majority of the people have adopted the new ways. But there are ways, I think, that we can still hold on to it. Every year in Namibia, we celebrate cultural days, and there are different initiatives that help in schools and stuff, and university as well. We have cultural festivals and stuff like that to try and just encourage people to still hold on to their culture, their cultures, their beliefs, share food, share everything that's beautiful about the cultures. And there are those efforts. So at least things are being done. But I would say that a lot has changed based on the influences that we've had. I hope it answers a little bit the first question. No one, if you want to add something on top of that.
You can continue, I'll
Okay.
come through later.
Okay. Regarding the young people in politics, Job Amupanda is 30 years old. He is actually, wow. I must say he's quite a bit of a role model, because Job is the type of person that is not scared to approach political, our big politicians in terms of our president and different leaders that we have. So we have a really old senior leadership within our government. The people our president is like 84 or something like that. So, and that whole generation occupies almost everything within the government. So it's been very difficult for young people to actually gain some power within the country. But with the last election, there's so much hope, because there are new independent candidates coming up, which are younger, in their 40s, in their 30s. More young people are voting. Before, young people weren't interested in voting because obviously majority of the people were still voting for the parties that they are used to. But there's a change, there's a shift. Younger people are more hungry. They want more things, because one of the biggest issues we have in our country is access to land. So that's one of the biggest things that we are all facing as the youth. And that has encouraged a lot of young people to go out, vote, try and get more candidates to join political parties. And there's definitely momentum, and there's a change happening. And lastly, what can you just repeat the last question?
Infrastructure and accessibility within the SADC area region, easy to travel around, and then the language one for Noel.
I can boast a little bit and say that Namibia has some of the best roads in Africa. Our country is connected from north, south, east, and west to all parts of the regions that we are connected to. I mean, not the roads going to Zimbabwe. Where is Webster? Because that part is a bit difficult because of the different type of climate, as well as the animals, and there's a lot of, because it's more forest and rain, and it's a bit more complicated. Those roads aren't the best, but in general, we have really great infrastructure. I think one of the, I won't say good things, but the influence that came after the colonization of Germany was that we developed some of the infrastructure and structure related, was really, really good that we created, I would say. So the roads and connections in terms of traveling is quite easy. You can drive in Namibia, there's no problem. We aren't a lot of people. Our population consists of 2.5 million people. So on average, you can drive for hours in Namibia and you won't encounter anybody. So that's just like an idea of how much space there is in the country. So you can travel freely. You can, within the country, as well as connecting to the bordering countries. Obviously, if you're not comfortable traveling long distance, there are flights available as well throughout Africa. More connections in South Africa, actually. So you'll have to connect via South Africa to go to some of the parts, but there are options available.
Do you need a visa to travel within SADC region?
For Namibia, in SADC, no, you don't need, yes. I think only in South Africa, they have rules that Angolans need to have a visa when they travel to South Africa. But I cannot confirm because, I mean, I'm not from South Africa. But I know that for Namibia, no, you don't need a visa for SADC. But for the other African countries, I'm sure that you just need to pay or get a stamp for 30 days when you arrive. But no visa is required, I suppose. But I can look into it as well, and I can share some information if you need me to.
I think you don't need a visa, but then you only get to stay for 3 months.
90 days.
You don't stay for more than 3 months without a visa. So if you want to stay more than 3 months, then you have to get a visa. But without a visa, you can only stay for 3 months.
So
I think there's something wrong with your
some
connection.
background noise.
Okay.
Anyway, are we through, Hero? Maybe I would just quickly like to touch on a little bit more on it. Um, because the ended of the infrastructure, allow me please, Foundation, to just to touch on the infrastructure part as well. Yes, Namibia is really one such country, African country, that I can boldly say that has got good infrastructure, and that is actually the backbone uh, um, of our country as well, and that allows trade actually to happen um, on or make it investor friendly as well. For instance, the road infrastructure of ours is built in such a way that we are trying to link the whole of SADC. And most of our countries, for instance, Botswana, which is our eastern neighboring country, they are landlocked, of which Namibia is actually blessed to be alongside the sea, which carries most of the, in terms of trade, which is more a medium that is being used. And actually, even in our midterm planning that we have as a country, it is of such a nature that we are trying to make Namibia also a trade hub for all the landlocked countries, which is also bordering with us. As such, there are maybe one example will be, say, Transkalari, which is a highway that is leading, that is from our harbor on the western side of Namibia, right through to the eastern border with Botswana and through into Botswana, which we call the Transkalari Highway. So that road system is really good, that it can really facilitate such. Sorry guys about the background noise, the door was open. So it can facilitate such. And the same happens towards our northern and towards our southern. We have what we call all those the highways, the corridors that is supposed or designed in such a way to facilitate trade, and with trade also goes travel and tourism in terms of human movement. So you can with ease actually move from, as it was mentioned, from the north to the south or from the west to the east on road. And then secondly, our airports is also actually of good structure. It is working condition. The only reason why you would possibly need to connect your flights through, say, South Africa mostly is just because of the volume. But it's not to say that our airports are unable to carry the volume, but it is just because of volume that we normally end the airways that are using the routes that you need to probably connect. But also, again, that's infrastructure in terms of airports and so on is also up to its good quality. And I think in terms of infrastructure, that really answers that. So our road system is really good. It will be good to see some of you guys when you do travel here on the roads. Yeah. And then in terms of languages, obviously it is inherited cultural way of doing of learning a language is normally by oral tradition, your language, your culture, and so on. Or at least I speak for Africans, in which I am. So that is by oral tradition, the way how we would normally learn about your culture and your languages and so forth. But obviously, with our historical background, things have changed. As it was observed earlier, say the traditional attire, what we wear, what we believe, what we eat has been influenced so much from the colonizers, one, and now secondly, Western, because of these cable TVs and things that we have these days. But there are concerted efforts really from the government and also from the locals in terms of local leadership to allow and celebrate within each sub cultural groups that we have your own days where you really promote culture, where you would have, for instance, one great example is we have a whole week at the specific varsity where I was, where for a whole week, we call it a cultural festival week, where for a whole week, each and every ethnic group across the country would be represented, even if it's just two people. Then you find other four friends that would just come on, and for the week at least, dress up, portray your culture, portray your language. And there is such platforms that is created just to make sure that at least we don't die out in terms of our culture, our background, and where we come from. So on top of that, yes, not all over, but at least selected schools have got selected languages that is now local languages that is being taught. And that is also taking it back when I said something about Swahili, even within our system already. Not all the schools do all the languages. You only do mostly where demographically it is viable. There you will find that language being promoted in the schools as well. So there is also another form in which we try and promote and harness and keep that culture. So for instance, our Independence Day is a very colorful day. The Independence Celebration Day is a very colorful day where at least a day before, on the day, and so on, you will see across the country, people really try and dress up and make it just appreciate where they come from. And it's kind of, we normally say, we find that unity within diversity, and that is what we are looking at. Go we on, probably just to add a little bit onto politics, once again, being on the ground, it is a new era. I am really excited about it. And I almost said something which might not sound right, but taking over or rather challenging the older leadership does not necessarily mean, in terms of being an African, it would normally be disrespectful to do something like that. But this time around, it is not disrespect.
Yeah.
We are, I think the youth is just in a position where they see that, you know, not everything, it cannot be business as usual. We are facing so many new challenges which are not necessarily known to the older generation. And they don't have really appreciation for the modern day challenges that we go through. So taking over, or rather challenging their leadership by taking over some certain key areas within the political structures is rather to complement, learn from them, and also make it more workable for today's challenges that we as the youth are facing. And I mean, that comes also obviously with the change in the leadership style that the new generation is bringing about within those structures. So if it helps you to put it, is that we don't foresee any unrest in the near future, and we are hoping not to go that route, but it's just to say, listen guys, how can we complement each other? But obviously you have a better chance of being heard if you're within the system as of outside from the system. So the new leadership that even came about, as it was brilliantly portrayed by Hero in the presentation that came about, rather did not disrupt the whole system, but it just shook them up to say, this is how we think things can be done better. And it honestly complemented the new management style. So it is definitely not business as usual, but it's also not business disruption, but rather business complementing on the way how we want things to be done.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think the culture and the language issue I actually took together. Is there, Foundation, perhaps something in particular from your set of questions that you had that we might have left out that you want us to touch on?
I'm good for now. So yes,
okay.
I'm good. So Webster, over to you.
Okay, great stuff.
Hit us, Webster.
I also wanted to ask a question about what the tourism industry in Namibia.
Webster, we cannot hear
your
you.
Microphone.
Webster, we cannot hear you.
But my mic is on.
I think Webster is logged on two names.
Are you connected on two devices?
Hello guys, can you hear me now?
We hear music.
I think the music is from Karen.
Okay. So while you're trying to sort out that, please, can we all mute ourselves?
Okay. Of course, not you now.
Is Karen with us? I think the big, yeah.
You can mute Webster.
I'm muted. Webster, can you hear? Ah, okay. He can't speak.
Okay,
Hello?
can you try again now and see?
Okay. It's still making the noise.
Yeah, it's still making the noise. Okay.
Yeah,
Try and
I
find
think
out
the
what,
host.
while I manage for now. You know, try and find out what the problem is. Do we have any more questions?
I think in the chat we had some. Oh, Maral, did you want to say something? I think you were speaking.
Yeah, I was just saying if the host can mute everyone, and then you can mute the person that wanna talk or ask questions.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's.
So let's look in the chat. Do we have any questions there?
Yes,
So
I believe so.
Gabriel says, I want to connect with the youth, striving to be in politics as well as trade facilitation and increasing trade there. Okay, that's a comment. Someone says, I envy Namibian roads. Well, I have me too. I will envy it, or I envy it. I haven't been there. I hope to go there. Then someone says, I used to hear about Caprivi Strip when I was in school. Is it famous as it was? Please share some information. Caprivi Strip.
No one, do you want to go?
You go first. I'm comfortable.
So Caprivi Strip is like the northeastern strip of the country. You will notice when you look at the map of Namibia, it's very unusual because we have got like a small part that just a small part that was created to connect to the different African countries like Zimbabwe, Zambia, I think part of Botswana, if I'm not mistaken. So the strip was connected in a way that it connects to those countries. But it's geographically, it doesn't look, it's just a small part in the northern part of the country, northeastern part of the country. Yes. No one, do you want to add some more?
Yeah. Quite interesting actually about the Caprivi Strip is also not only the fertile ground that we find there. In fact, it actually has the potential together with the northeastern part of the country to be a breadbasket for Namibia, which sadly currently is actually underdeveloped. But the other interesting thing about the Caprivi Strip is also that it is surrounded, as it was said, it is a gateway. So just from that one part of our country, we have Botswana to the south, from the Caprivi Strip, in Angola, and also Zambia to the north of it. So I think also historically, it's one of the few, if not the only African country actually where one part of or 5 parts of different countries would share core borders, like a common border kind of a situation. So that's actually the interesting facts around the Caprivi Strip for us as well.
Okay, so there's another question. Okoye Benjamin says, I had a Namibian friend who told me sometime earlier that Namibians have flair for cars, especially high-speed cars among the youth, and with frequent car crashes. How true is this?
No one, maybe you answer.
Quite frankly, I only know color of cars. So I'm so sorry to disappoint on this one. But yeah, when it comes to car crashes and fatalities within car crashes, unfortunately, with the really good road infrastructure that we have, we really are struggling with that. I could not pinpoint that, but I am definitely not going to say that one of the reasons, no, primarily it will not be because of the high-speed cars. But then, because the reason why I'm saying because of traveling, I've seen that some other countries, like for instance, in Europe, for instance, you find those speed lanes and you find that there's no speed limits in some of the parts, but still people, I think it's just a behavioral thing. And we are just not really considerate of each other when we are on our roads. But it is not because of the road infrastructure itself, but it's human errors. Most of these accidents are caused due to human errors, or rather human negligence, and we do not appreciate or consider each other when we are on the roads. So that is what I will maybe pin on our on the crashes, but definitely not because of the speed cars. But I know I suppose maybe the beautiful cars are the ones that are speeding, or otherwise, if it was color of cars, I would have elaborated more on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you want to say something, Hero?
No.
Okay,
That's
two
summed it up.
questions coming in. The first one, how do you perceive AfCFTA, that African Continental Free Trade Area agreement, is an economic agreement within Africa? How do you perceive it for Namibia and Africa? Then secondly, how is the balance of trade in Namibia? Are you import dependent or self-sustainable?
Maybe I'll start with the second question while I'm still pondering on the idea of the first one. Namibia definitely, yes, potentially, as I said, could be self, or at least to a greater extent, we should be self-sustainable. But due to some, I don't know where we come from, we are at this point in time not self-sustainable. I was looking at the statistics over because of the unrest that we just had experienced in our southern neighbors. It was just brought about, something that I just read was very interesting, that over the past 3 months, close to 49% of what we consume here locally was actually imported from that side, meaning that over, I think, close to 20 billion Namibian dollars, or South African rand, if you wish, worth of trade was done from South Africa to Namibia, whereas only a fraction of that, about 1 point, not even 2 billion, was from us towards South Africa. So as you can see, most of our stuff are actually being imported, and sometimes it's the least important, or some things which can actually even be done locally. So that's actually the sad reality on which we are sitting currently. And then because of that, also, I'm not sure how the free trade agreements would really benefit Namibia, because we also rely mostly, as I said, one of the areas which we are moving into is to try and get Namibia the transport hub for the SADC region, for instance. So we stand to gain a lot through the movement of goods and services through our region. And should we say go for the free trade, and as a country that really imports at least half of our basic needs, I cannot see how we can really generate revenue than else, which we cannot elsewhere get, in order to cater for our local needs. I think that should more or less answer that first question as well.
I would also say that, I would also like to add that there's also been initiatives for us to be more self-reliant, because they've also had many trials where they've been producing and manufacturing goods, and right now there's a lot of campaigns to encourage Namibian products and services. And also with the pandemic, I think a lot of local businesses have also grown in that way, and we've also begun to manufacture and create products. So I think obviously that increase in those type of services and products will have an impact within the next year or two in terms of how much we import or export, because if we can get to a point where we can produce more cater for our needs locally, we wouldn't need to be able to import. But also one of the key factors or reasons why we also import as much is because that, especially in terms of products like agriculture and food, especially food, is because of the drought, because we are a really, really, really dry country. So our capacity to provide is also limited. So a lot of the products we import are food, is basically food, and like cereal, like the cereals and those different types of stuff, like flour, different types of things that we need to be able to sustain the population. But of course, there are initiatives, and we can do better. Definitely, we can do better because there's a lot of potential, and there is potential.
Oh, okay, so maybe we'll take a few more questions. Webster, are you good now? Do you want to take the couple more 2 questions I can see in the chat? Are you good now to take over the run? Webster, can you hear me?
Yeah. How's my sound coming out?
Okay.
It's still making the noise.
You're still having that problem. Okay, don't worry. Let me continue. Yeah. So,
okay, sure. Great.
Thank you very much, Webster. The other question from Okoye Benjamin. I didn't hear much about Sam Nujoma, the strongman of Namibia. Leadership comparison with the ones after him, that's 1. Then 2, where can we find export-ready companies in Namibia?
Where can we find?
Export-ready companies in Namibia. I guess what he's asking is, do you have companies that are producing and are ready to export?
I think they are, no, but we can start with the first question, or should we continue?
Yeah, go ahead, Hero.
No one, do you want to add something first?
I could maybe start off with, obviously, it's not that it's not an oversight that we didn't really speak much about our former president, in fact, now affectionately known as the father of the nation, which is Sam Nujoma. So that is a good point that has been put out there. It is probably just because we didn't want to, we just sort of shied away, I think, Hero, to be safe from politics. But of course, he is still well respected, still in great health. It's really somebody that we still look up to. And obviously, why everybody would be fond of is normally the first president that takes over from colonialism, and all the struggles are normally the person. And he still has got a lot of influence on our day-to-day businesses currently as we are run as a country. Comparing him with his predecessor, the president that followed him up, which is Hifikepunye Pohamba, the 2 of them are actually from the same tribe that was explained earlier, the majority of which about 49% is. And he was more of a peacemaker, the middle child. We did actually not know until we got the current one, but he is that phlegmatic leadership style, somebody that is really just a peacemaker, that was just out there to build and continue on the legacy that was left by the first president. And then obviously the current president is one of our, not only a doctorate that was conferred onto him, but by education, one of our most educated officials, or the office of political office bearers that we have, is our current president, Hage Geingob. It's just sad, or regrettably, what we are going through now for the past at least 2 years so to come that we are facing. But you know, he too is actually a great leader in his own regard. And he really also brought about drastic changes, notably within the political sphere of Namibia. By the way, he is from the Damara, the Kwekwe people that was explained earlier. So the current president also does the clicks, just in case if you're wondering. Yeah, that's how the 3 of them would compare with each other. And then I think, you know, I would leave the trade part, or the ready-made of the trade partnership companies to you, if you maybe elaborate on that or touch a little bit on that.
I think our Ministry of Trade has a directory where you can find all the list of the companies that provide export services, as well as the different sectors. So I will try and find a link that I can share, but there are directories available where you can find the information. So I'll definitely share that after the presentation.
Okay, one last question from the chat.
Sorry, maybe this person, the question comes from an interest. So the document name is also Namibian Trade Directory. And just like where you would find a normal directory, say in a country with all the contacts of normal people like civilians, the trade directory only consists really, it's a well put document with all the businesses actually that is to do within Namibia, with all the contacts and so on. So it's a worthwhile document to look at.
Okay, lastly, how has the current pandemic affected Namibia's health systems?
Yeah.
Perhaps no one can answer since he's in Namibia right now.
Namibia, our health system, I see actually one of my friends is also online. If I was the host, I would have put her on the spot because she's also from the medical fraternity. In fact, also on the forefront of this current global pandemic that we are fighting. But from the layman's experience that I have, we have got actually, our health system is one of the best. In fact, even on the private, even on the public sphere, it is well enough. And we also have got the private sector that is really supplementing that as well. But then the first one and two second wave was okay with the current the pandemic that we are going through. But unfortunately, I must admit that we were not prepared for the third wave, which most of the countries are struggling with. And there we actually saw that not even money can really buy your health. The whole system, the health system is being challenged and is being overburdened. So yes, we do feel the pinch on that. So almost 2 years into this, we were not really even prepared as a country or as a nation as a whole for the COVID-19 pandemic that we are going through. But I must also admit that the government did not go back and sit back and just look into that. They have really been actively working on that. So time and again, when need are, they normally put up temporary structures. For instance, the army tented hospitals, facilities, and so on. Recently, some structures were erected infrastructure was erected, for instance, with the shortage of oxygen and so on to address that issue. And some extra additional beds were also made available to cater for those that are really in dire need of that. So although we were not prepared as a country or might never be prepared for those volumes of patients, at least something has been done around that. And if sadly a loss of life would not be because of total negligence from the health authorities as such, but at least most would have been done to try and preserve and save lives at the end of the day, which is something really commendable from our government side.
Okay, so there's a test message question quickly before we wrap up. Are Namibians open to other Africans other than their neighbors because there have been incidences of xenophobic attacks, mostly in South Africa, but also in Namibia? So are Namibians open to other African countries? If this kind of attacks happen, do you think it's because of ignorance, or does it have to do with maybe social circumstances, unemployment? You know, what's your sense?
Should I go?
Please do.
I remember when it happened. It's years ago. I think it happened in South Africa, and I think there were some cases that also moved on to Namibia. You know, I think a lot of ways we are connected in a way, South Africa and Namibia, sometimes also culturally. But I would say that the case, in relation to the cases that happened in Namibia, it wasn't that much. It was a really small percentage of these type of cases that occurred. But at the same time, also, I believe a lot of the reasons why these type of things happen is the lack of education, because people always sometimes find it threatening that someone would come and obviously try and do business or do this within the country and they can't make ends meet, you know. But it's just that lack of education to say that, okay, we can all share the space, we can all have businesses, we can all work together, you know, that openness. But I think those cases were quite minor, or not minor, but few in a way. And I wouldn't say that it would represent the whole country, you know, because in general, I would say mostly we are welcome. I mean, you can imagine we are 2.5 million people in an African country, and it's a really big country, you know. So there is enough space for us to share, honestly. But it's just people mostly don't have the desire to live in Namibia, I would say, because it is open, definitely. In terms of the bureaucracy, in terms of moving or living within Namibia, I can't comment on that because I don't know how complex it is. But for sure, it's more or less the same as in the neighboring African countries. So it's not like there are more barriers to entry. No, for sure not. Because if we can encourage free moving of people, you know, it's not as complicated. So there aren't additional barriers, and for sure we do welcome people, and those cases were not as severe. And I haven't heard any new cases of that happening locally, but maybe no one can also speak on that because he's home and he also watches news and has exposure to things that are happening as well. So maybe he can add on that.
Let me start off actually, even if it sounds boasting, but it is what it is. Namibians by nature are really peace-loving people. And as it was almost in his closing sentences, he actually stole that from me when Hero said, Namibia is a vast country. That's where I wanted to come through to say that we believe that under the sun, there is a bit of sunshine that each of us can get without having to step on each other's toes, and that it really is what it is. I would rather maybe even prescribe, if I may, such observations of xenophobic attacks within Namibia, primarily more to media or journalistic propaganda, but it is really isolated, if at all, that we would really have some xenophobic attacks within Namibia. There is really just no need and room for that. Although, and it is just not some sort of a gimme or just a word of saying that we have, but really we have got enough sunshine for each and everybody, and we are really open and more accepting of others also, our African brothers or wherever you come from. That is what it is. And then secondly, why I say insignificant in context is if you look, obviously also what is happening around us. Even with whatever is happening around us, that is one of the things that it was never copied and pasted into our own setup. So definitely all is welcome, trade is welcome, and movement. I mean, tourism is one of our biggest significant contributors towards our country's GDP in terms of employment. That's why we took the knock so hard with this current global pandemic. And I mean, there is just no way that we can achieve all that if we were one of the countries that would be subscribed to as a xenophobic nation. So be rest assured that should you want to come through, that is one of the least, if at all, that of the worries that should be on your list. I think I can confidently say that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I would definitely love to come, and I would love to visit the ghost town. It looks interesting. Yes, I would love to go there. If you're afraid to take me there, just show me how to get there. And
No
then
problem.
to add to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement that we mentioned, you did say that Namibia wants to be a transport hub in SADC. I mean, that's a good thing. The AFCFTA is supposed to enhance businesses, the economy within the whole of Africa. I mean, if you're a producer, you want to make it easy for yourself to transport your goods to other countries, to sell to other countries. You also want to make it easy for people to travel within the continent. Now it's a little bit difficult. It's actually easier to fly out of Africa than to travel within the continent. So with the AFCFTA, it's one of the engineering processes that the AU, the African Union, is putting together or has put together to make sure that we begin to work together as a continent, that we are able to study within our continent, that we're able to travel within our continent, that when people leave school, they're able to start businesses and employ people and boost, the economies of our region. You want to make it easy for these things to happen. So we're hoping that the AFCFTA will be a success. It's going to be a difficult process because we know how complicated Africa is. On a normal day, we're probably more than 3,000 countries, to be honest. So it's a lot of work. It has started, and we hope that we will get there eventually. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. Thank you, Hero, for a fantastic presentation. Thank you, Norwin, for being a great backup. Thank you, Webster. From Zimbabwe, although you had a little bit of difficulty with the internet, it comes with the territory. We understand that. We love you all the same.
Exactly.
For showing up, And if you would like to continue to know about our activities at the African Press Club, please leave your email in the chat and we'll add you to our mailing list. If we already have your email, that's fine. You'll continue to receive our newsletter and updates about our events. It's been a wonderful time for me today. So much, within this 2-hour conversation. Thank you, everybody. I'm happy and delighted you really took out the time on a Saturday that you're supposed to be probably partying or preparing for a party. Join us on the internet to discuss Africa. We hope to have more for you between now and the end of the year. So have a lovely, lovely weekend and a lovely week ahead. And I hope to see you soon. Please join in the African Press Club. Let's work together.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye in your language, Hero. There has to be a and then Norwin, use the click. You use the click to say goodbye.
I would say good evening, and that is same ways.
Wow.
Same ways. Can we maybe allow Anthony to please try that?
Yes, Anthony, come on, you get this.
No, don't try me, don't try me.
In Afrikaans, you just say...
I'll say in Kiswahili, we say kwaheri.
Kwaheri.
Also, you're the lecturer from Swahili that we need here.
Sasa.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I only know Karibu, Asante, Sasa.
Karibu, welcome, Asante, that's great, yeah.
And a few other words. In Afrikaans, you just say totsiens. It's basically a greeting till we see each other again.
Okay.
Totsiens.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll
Take
see
care,
you
everybody. Thank you all for everything.
Bye.
Bye.